Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome back to the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight are our usual suspects, owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Mr. Tomothy Haggis.
Hey, God bless you, everybody. For those, that's for everyone that just sneezed.
Oh, thank you.
Just those people.
Owner of One Genome Short Productions, Mr. Garral.
Hallelujah, people.
And writer, actor, and, well, all-around funny guy, Mr. Kyle Fine.
Ah, it's very sweet of you. You know, I give Scientology one thing. They and me have something in common. We both like... nope, this joke is completely off the rails. Backing up, aborting. Walking back. Okay. Stepping off the edge.
What was that?
Okay. I'm going to need a good auditing to get over that one.
Oh, nice. Very nice. All right. Well, I guess we all discussed, we got together and discussed the fact that we covered politics, so why not religion? And tonight we each have 6 lawyers sitting in our respective offices with us, making sure we don't say anything bad, or they could possibly get us sued. So
I couldn't get a lawyer to agree to work with me on that. I don't think anybody believes that's going to happen.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I for sure will say something that'll piss someone off tonight.
That's probably true. That's probably true. All right, let's go ahead and poke the monkey, find out what we're doing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Thetans and Theists, welcome to the main event! Tonight, 2 deific documentaries battle for your hearts and minds. Who will clear their audit, and who has to go back to care? In the first corner, from 2015, written by Alex Gibney and Lawrence Wright. Directed by Alex Gibney. Starring Paul Haggis, Jason Beggy, and Spanky Taylor. Going clear! In the second corner, from 2006, directed by Heidi Ewing and Rachel Grady. Starring Mike Papantonio, Lou Engel, and Becky Fisher. Jesus Care!
All right, let's move on to our first round, which is writing.
So with writing, when it comes to documentaries, there's kind of 2 stages to the writing when you're doing this. The first one is kind of the concept. So a lot of times when you're going in and doing a documentary, as some of us have done, you kind of figure out what kind of story you want to tell and what direction you want it to go. There's some real life ones. Jesus Church. Jesus Christ. I can't talk. Jesus Camp. Thank you. Is one of those where I feel like they weren't really planning on telling a story. They were just going to kind of collect some real world observations. The Scientology Going Clear, definitely they had I don't want to say an agenda, but there was obviously a story that they were aiming to tell because of the people that they chose to interview, obviously. The other part of writing in a documentary comes from the editing. That's where the beats are made and the acts are broken up and the story really takes shape under the direction of the editor. So when we're talking about writing, those are the two things I'm going to talk about: is the initial concept and then how the editor put things together. So I think I have to give Jesus Camp credit because if somebody had pitched this idea to me, and I was like, so you're not really looking for anything, nefarious going on at these Jesus camps. You're just kind of showing what they are like to explain them to people. And because the Jesus Camp really kind of lacks a story, and it doesn't really have the typical, beginning, middle, end. And so if somebody had told me that I'm going to do this documentary, you want to work on it with me, I've been like, not really. It doesn't anything that strikes me, but they were able to put together a really compelling documentary. I've been tossing back and forth the 2 weeks since I've seen it. Was it compelling because I was waiting to get to the end and have some kind of big reveal? Was I expecting that? Or was it compelling because because it was just an interesting environment to get a peek into? Living in Iowa and going out to rural parts of Iowa, this wasn't as foreign to me as it would be somebody maybe living in Chicago or New York or Los Angeles. I imagine for those people, seeing something like what happened in Jesus Camp would be quite jarring. And for me, it was like, yeah, I know those people. They live down the street from me. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, Going Clear, I thought was really a really great story. I think they had a lot of strong evidence put together to kind of support their case about the fact that. Hang on a second. Can I call Scientology a fraud? No. Okay, I can't call Scientology a fraud. My lawyer says so. So the whatever Scientology is, but it's not a fraud. Okay, I got a thumbs up. So yes. So I think they did a good job of, I think it's hard. I think one of the reasons that the Scientology didn't go after Going Clear when it came out because they did such a good job of just stating facts, and I know that they were very upset by the documentary, but if they're stating facts, it's really hard to go after them. So, I kind of just blew through all that, but I don't know. What did you guys think in terms of writing?
Yeah. So I think you did a really good job breaking down the two stages of what you would consider the major portions of writing when it comes to documentary. Sometimes you go into these things not knowing what you're going to get. You're just there to expose the truth and let the public make the decision. That's kind of what Jesus Camp felt like to me. Someone obviously knew that this was going on and that it would be interesting to someone to show. They also have some intersplicing of footage of what seems like I would guess a liberal talk show host. I hate to say it that way, but now I feel like a jerk. So someone counter to this religious conservatism who is kind of driving the narration a little bit by stating facts and figures and taking call-ins. That's the other part of the documentary other than actually being at the camp. Going Clear, like you said, has a very clear agenda to sort of expose and shed light on the inner workings and the things that the public is not necessarily aware of when it comes to Scientology. I thought both were very compelling stories. Jesus Camp was an interesting watch given the current climate of politics in America. Mm-hmm. I watched Jesus Camp when it was like just released on DVD because I had caught wind of it from somewhere and thought it was a very interesting story. And back then, I guess I was completely unaware that this sort of subculture existed. But now that it's gone so much more mainstream since the movie was released, it's a very interesting and eye-opening watch to see how early the writing was on the wall for this stuff, and that either people didn't take it seriously or it just continued to roll forward and no one was able to stop it from becoming a huge part of the political landscape. Whether you think that's good or bad, it very much goes on your politics, I'm sure. I don't have anyone here to give me thumbs up for saying things like frauds, but I'm just going to say allegedly after everything. So I think that's how they do it. So, when you watch Jesus Camp, you're watching, to me, it's much more harrowing because you're watching children. And that is the very compelling aspect of that show, is you're seeing how these children are being indoctrinated, led, how they're getting this positive feedback, how their behavior is being shaped by these adults around them, and their sort of lack of, I have a terrible way to put this, but they're just unabashedly, unashamedly evangelical. And to a lot of people, that's a little cringeworthy, or you're sort of like, how do you not see that this is bad or annoying or wrong, or you're being indoctrinated? But that's, that is the compelling thing to look at, is to see this slice of the world that you are not interacting with generally. And I've just rambled on and on and on, and my fake lawyers are giving me a thumbs down, so I'm going to let Gabe go.
Oh, man. Yeah, hopefully your lawyers aren't like Michael Cohen or anything like that. You might be in trouble.
All of my lawyers have been rated multiple times.
Awesome.
My lawyer's not happy with what was just said. He wants to distance himself from
neither
it.
are mine. Right. Yeah, and I agree with Tom that overall, that this category is difficult for documentaries because they aren't like really, in a certain sense, technically written. And I would say that something like Going Clear has a little bit more writing to it. Well, one of the things that I found really interesting about Jesus Camp is how much the filmmakers just kind of stood back and just let you kind of observe what was happening. I mean, it was a real fly on the wall kind of experience. There wasn't any narration, anything like that. Whereas Going Clear had maybe a little bit more writing to it, where they did provide some kind of guidance in narration to tell you what was going on a little bit, to give you the history of Scientology, and those kinds of things. So I would say that Going Clear had a little bit more actual writing to it. But it is an interesting thing with documentaries, how much of it is actually, how much of it is actually written and how much of it is just like, okay, this is what we experienced and we're going to show it to you. And I think later on when we talk about the category of like editing, that's where the real storytelling comes into play for these documentaries. And with both of you guys, I think it's going to be really difficult. One of the challenges for me is going to be talking about the filmmaking in these, because that's really what we're here to talk about to a certain degree, and not so much the content and our personal opinions on the content of these films. And that's going to be really challenging because both of these are really they have really strong content matter that it's hard not to also form a strong opinion about. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what we think in later rounds about things like editing and that kind of thing.
Now, I've been a part of 2 documentaries. Well, actually 3. 2 of those documentaries, we had no idea what our story was going to be. One was on the Blazing Saddle, which is the oldest gay bar this side of the Mississippi. And it's here in Des Moines. And we just started shooting. We just started following the owners around. We started following some of the patrons around and just worked on that every weekend for about 4 months. And then we started doing interviews and started collecting some of the photographs and newspaper articles and everything like that. And the director put something together with it. When you start out with something like that, you kind of have a roundabout idea of what you want to say. It's just you don't know how to say it. When you're doing a film like that. And I feel that's what Jesus Camp was trying to do, was just be a fly on the wall and saying, well, the story will produce itself. You know, we'll see the story once we start editing, and these type of documentaries are made in the edit room. Another one we did was a freedom flight when we took a bunch of veterans out to Washington, D.C. I clearly knew what I wanted to do. I kind of had a base outline for what I wanted. The gentleman that set it all up was the one that wrote all the narration describing what was going on, and we did a few interviews, and that was that. And that one was a little bit different in the fact that I kind of knew what I wanted to capture. I knew what we needed to capture in order to tell a story. Where, you know, the bar one was like, oh, we'll see what we get, you know. Kind of more fly by the seat of your pants. And I totally agree that you can tell the difference between both these documentaries. And I'm not saying one's better than the other one because of how they approached it. But the Going Clear was definitely written out like, okay, this is our base outline. This is what we need to achieve. And, you know, from the sounds of it, they were very careful in how they worded stuff and how they showed stuff. I believe it was Tom that said they did it all with facts, which, you know, I believe most documentaries should be done with facts. Unfortunately, that is not the case. And I totally agree with Tom. You know, that's watching part of Jesus Camp. I'm like, oh, I know a few of those people. But one thing I think that we need to make clear, the lawyers is nodding to me, that not every evangelical is like what you see in Jesus Camp. Not every Scientologist is like what you see described in Going Clear. You know, documentaries are kind of made about something, and people tend to generalize, oh, well, that's how all those people are, and it's usually not the case. Now, granted, a majority of them, or even 40% of them might be that way, but we got to try and stay away from generalizations on any documentary. That kind of makes it, I think, less impactful for me. I want the truth, and I feel like Going Clear provided more of that. I feel like Jesus Camp was there. There were certain things that were cut out. I also feel like Going Clear also had, when they set out, they're like, okay, we need to tell the people the truth, what is going on. So was it a little leaning towards what they were wanting to make? Yes, probably. Same with Jesus Camp, but that could go the same for any film that anyone makes. You're going to have a bias.
Well said.
Thanks.
For sure. Yeah.
Thanks. I didn't know what to throw in there, so I just rambled. Lawyers giving me a thumbs up. All right, we're good. You guys want to add anything else to writing/editing? I think is what we need to call this category.
You're changing it up.
Yeah. Well, it's documentary. I mean,
it is. It is. Because I had a choice for writing, but if you throw editing in there, then it's a little bit different.
All right, Gabe, you choose for writing. Everyone else can choose either writing or editing.
Okay.
Tom, what's your vote?
I'm gonna go with Going Clear.
All right. Kyle?
I am going to go with Jesus Camp.
All right. Gabe?
I'm going to go with Going Clear.
All right. And I'm going to have to go with Going Clear on that as well. As you guys may know, there's not a whole lot of trivia for either one of these films. So I'm not really going to bother with it again this month. Last month,
just make up some shit about Xenu.
Yeah.
Xenu was 300 feet tall. It had 12 dicks.
Really?
Oh, God.
One for each month of the Julian calendar.
Okay, now I need somebody to come over and clean up all this coffee my lawyer just spit all over my desk.
My lawyer's dead. I think he just died of a heart attack. That was said by Kyle Fine, not by anyone else.
I told you I don't have any lawyers. I don't care if I piss off a Scientologist.
All right. Where was I? Oh, yeah. 12 Dicks of Xenu. Let's move on.
12 Dicks of Xenu. That's what I'm doing for Christmas this year.
Let's move on to our second round, which is acting.
Acting
Or subject matter. There you go.
A little difficult in a documentary, but Going Clear does feature a few celebrities, some of them very, very famous, but none of them directly interviewed, only in archival clips or discussions about them. So I would say that this, to me, would be more, what kind of interesting performances are we getting from these people when they're interacting with each other or the documentarians? And Going Clear is very well structured. I like the sit-down interviews interspliced with the archival footage. It feels like a news program or investigative journalism to me. I like the talk with the author who wrote the book. I like that feels different than the other interviews. That's like at his home, well lit. Some of these other interviews look like they're done inside of a studio, darkly lit. And I like it. It's very well structured. They're getting clear, concise answers. They also have the benefit of dealing with people who are in the entertainment industry and are used to doing things like this, talking to a camera. And also I'm sure they have a benefit of a much bigger production crew and other things like that to set up their narrative. In Jesus Camp, what I would say as far as acting goes is, what are the performances or the instances we're being shown? Are they compelling, watching these people interact in daily life? And I think they did a very good job of highlighting specific aspects of this camp, the people surrounding it, and also diving out of that a little bit to listen to the talk radio host have this discussion about this big movement towards evangelism. That's the right one. Mm-hmm. And how that is shaping politics and what these people are pushing towards. And I think the choices they had there, especially with the interview, they go and they have that one-on-one and the kind of fly on the wall with Ted Haggard, I think his name was, who shortly after Jesus Camp came out was exposed for having like a 3-year gay relationship and buying meth from his boyfriend. So to me, that's,
Surprised.
we can get into the hypocrisy of organized religion off mic, maybe. I hear all your lawyers nodding their heads. But the performances, and I say that for the people putting on the camps, that we see in Jesus Camp are very compelling. These people are either very good at acting or they're true believers in this. And that to me is very interesting. Whether I agree with it is a whole other matter. But they did a very good job capturing the raw emotion of some of these things, of making sure they're down there at the level with the kids and capturing them away from the adults so that you're getting bits and pieces of everything. You're not only getting, what do these kids say when they're around adults? What do they say when they're around their family, when they're at the camp? They went all over, and I like that. As Mike said earlier, though, I'm sure there are big chunks of very normal things that happen that are not shown because they wouldn't be interesting. Watching the kids eat lunch and talk about Power Rangers or whatever, well, unless they talk about Power Rangers being warlocks or whatever, would not be really interesting, so they cut some of that stuff out. But I think both are good at what they're accomplishing, one being more of a fly on the wall, let's just shoot and see what happens, and one being like a structured expose. So acting is hard to judge because these people, for the most part, shouldn't be acting. They should be having real conversations, living in the real world. So I guess I'm judging it by their ability to convey their message and how their actions are influencing and shaping the tone that the documentary is taking.
Yeah, and I always wonder, technically with the documentary, we expect to be seeing, people who aren't acting, and it's just real life interactions between people. But there's a part of me that feels like whenever a camera is present, and people know that it's present, that there's probably a little bit of acting going on to a certain degree. That people aren't entirely natural when they know that a camera is present. And so, I wonder how much these kids in Jesus Camp were compelled to, kind of act more like they were more devout and they were more into this thing than they really were. There was a point in Jesus Camp where and I think it might be the little girl who's like featured on kind of like the poster or the cover of the Jesus Camp video. She's crying, maybe speaking in tongues, and then you catch a little quick glimpse at the camera. She looks at the camera like, is it still recording? And then she goes back to, increased, crying and so I feel like, especially in today's world where we're just inundated with quote unquote reality shows, these things aren't real to a certain degree because people know they're being recorded and they behave differently than they would if they didn't know they were being recorded. And so I think that applies heavily to Jesus Camp. Like, how authentic are some of these things? I think some of it they didn't know, but like the pastor, the woman who was leading the Jesus Camp. I mean, do you think maybe she was a little bit more, more dramatic because she knew she was going to be recorded? Do you think she was? Or not? Or do you think
I don't think she was, because I mean she's the main subject of it, and I imagine this is what she's like. I would say around people, not so much when the cameras are rolling, but I think I don't know what she's like in her private life. I mean, we've all heard about people that act like this in public, and then in private they're someone very, very different. So, that's hard for me to say. I feel like this is pretty much her public persona that we saw. I don't know if she was really hamming it up for the cameras too much. I'll be honest, it didn't occur to me that the kids could be hamming it up for the camera. I kind of doubt that as well. So,
well, I think it's a feedback loop to some extent, and that's also, even if the camera wasn't there, I think it's the presence of these adults who are egging them on. They're looking for this approval. So to me, when looking at the camera and then increasing their, crying or acting up, I think that sort of thing would be happening there regardless. Just they would be looking towards the adults for their validation rather than am I on camera? And that's sort of the feedback loop of these isolated things that always makes me a little on edge watching them. Is you take people outside of society and you keep telling them this is the way to act, this is the way to believe, and then you give them rewards for acting that way. And I think that's particularly dangerous when you're talking about doing it with kids. So I think the camera is really just seems like another adult in the room to me, watching the kids, giving them feedback by staying on them or paying attention to them. Yeah. I did read an article after I watched the movies that they followed up with some of the kids from Jesus Camp years after it was done. And the long-haired kid who wanted to be a preacher did eventually go on to be a pastor. And they spoke with the woman who led the camp. And from what I've gathered, everyone involved in the situation said, yeah, there were some things that maybe we felt like they paid too much attention to or too little. But everything I could read was that it was pretty much a fair and accurate representation of what that was like. So no one was like complaining. There weren't like lawsuits or defamation or anything like that. People were like, yeah, that's what it was like. And a lot of these, people are that way and they're not ashamed to be that way. So, but they didn't seem to have like a major, backlash against the movie for taking things out of context. They seemed to agree that it was showing the truth.
Yeah, I wonder what pretense the filmmakers were under when they were there filming. What did they say? When they were filming, were they just like, "Oh, we just want to document what you're doing," or what? Because obviously they were there. I mean, it would have been clear, that those filmmakers were right there in the middle of everything. Getting super duper close-ups of these kids, crying and speaking in tongues, and close-ups of the woman giving her sermons and that kind of thing. So they weren't. While we get kind of a fly on the wall kind of perspective on it, they certainly weren't flies on the wall. They were right in the middle of it. So I wonder what they said. How did they gain access to this? And it would be interesting to know how they did that. Obviously, we can't know, but it would be interesting to know what they said to get in that close. Yeah.
Dead air. Yeah,
I killed it.
I'm sorry, I was talking to my lawyer.
There is a possibility. We're just I'm just spitballing here, but it's a possibility. They say, we want to look at the rise of evangelism in America, and we think your camp is an interesting example of that. Just act how you're going to act, and we're going to put it on the screen and let the public judge.
Right.
I don't necessarily think that for some people we watch Jesus Camp and we're shocked, but for some people that is the way they want religion to be. That is what they desire, and so they're not ashamed of having that shown. They feel bad that it's not that way everywhere. So maybe they're not, ridiculed, or they feel, like they're being taken advantage of. They're trying to show the world what this is and spread it that way. So maybe they think of it as publicity. I don't know.
No, that's a good point. A lot of people that look on that as, yeah, that's all right. I mean, I looked at it. I was disturbed with some things, but, just being a guy that's been on the other side of the camera, it's hard for me to take everything that I saw at face value, because I know that sometimes stuff can be taken out of context, but also I know people can ham it up for the camera, like Gabe said. So it's half dozen, six of the other.
6 of one.
Yeah,
six of one, half dozen
of the other. So when I watch documentaries, it's really hard for me to shut that off. I'm constantly left brain, right braining it. Now, if it's talking about something historical, not a cultural documentary, but something historical, I have an easier time of shutting that off in my head. But yeah, I agree. It's hard to be a fly on the wall when you have a camera, right? Like, it's not to call Tom out, but Tom, you are there with a camera at a wedding, and you are definitely smaller than I am. Do you feel like you can hide? Do you feel like you're well hidden, or do you feel like people are like, oh, hey, there's the camera guy?
I think people have a general, after about 5 minutes, what I basically tell them, I walk into a room and they're just, they kind of like turn away from the camera, and I'm like, look, you're going to do that for 5 more minutes, and then you're just going to get exhausted, and you're like, it's just too exhausting for you to try and hide from me and play up, and it's much more relaxing and easier for them to just be themselves.
Right.
And so they put their guard down after 5 minutes. And there's usually at weddings, there's alcohol going around, which helps. Yes. But I've shot weddings. No, you shoot weddings for me, but I've shot weddings, and I've been in situations where I'm just like, I'm not really sure how Mike would get through this right now, because like it's a benefit in this situation right now for me to have a small size and hide off in a corner, and they kind of forget that I'm there. And I've always wondered how you deal with those situations where you're just like, you're like kind of imposing and drawing attention to yourself.
It's kind of difficult sometimes. I mean, I'm 6'4", 270 pounds. I kind of stick out in the crowd, especially when I have a camera. When I'm on set, especially like if I'm doing interviews or stuff like that, I tell people, I know this is difficult, but I do not exist in your world right now. And they'll get a giggle. I'm like, just ignore me. I'm going to be sitting here staring at this monitor, but I'm not here. You talk with the interviewer, and whatever you say, if you don't want it used, just say, I don't want it used after you say it, and try and reword it. You try to go through all these steps just to make someone feel comfortable, but you're talking that you've got a camera and you're around all these kids. And how many cameras do you guys believe that they used for this? For Jesus?
I would say not many, just because their budget was probably really low.
Right.
I got a feeling that there were 2 in the worship scenes.
Yeah.
Just for coverage.
Right.
Yeah.
So
well, they were 2 directors, I believe. I believe it was either co-directed or
Well, and
I also.
Sorry, one more thing. What I wanted to say, when I help you out, Tom, and I'm shooting a wedding, and I'm trying to get some stuff, so I will stand way back and I'll use that zoom, and try and zoom in as close as I can. And usually that's when I can get some of the best stuff, is because I'm not right there. I'm off in the distance and I'm letting them interact with each other. And sometimes I feel like that's when I get the best stuff. But, you go around during photographs and you're trying to get the picture or get video of the people watching and interacting with each other while photographs are being taken. And you always get that, someone's sitting there talking and laughing, and all of a sudden you get a side glance towards your direction, and they all just like clam up. So I totally agree with the fact that it's not necessarily a fly on the wall, but I believe these people probably just got used to the cameras. Like they're just, oh yeah, that's Steve and Dave over there.
Right.
Just ignore them. So yeah, sorry, what were you going to say?
Me?
Yeah.
I felt like, I felt like going like Jesus Camp, that the subject, the Becky, was that her name? I felt like she may have had some kind of like final cut say in the video. I can't imagine her going into this and saying, I'd like to see the video before you put it out, to make sure there's nothing defamatory in there at all. To make sure that it was edited in a very honest way. And so I don't know. Did you guys feel like, I can't imagine that she would agree to do this and not have some kind of say over the final product.
Well,
I would let it. My life is boring as hell, and I wouldn't let somebody do a documentary without me seeing it first.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. One piece of trivia I did find stated that, that Levi, the young boy spotlighted from the Bible camp, pointed out that his mother's quote, "Our firm belief is there are 2 kinds of people in this world, people who love Jesus and people who don't," actually concluded with, and they both deserve love and respect, and that she had been cut off prematurely. So I don't know. I don't know if she had final say, and this could all just be, oh, well, we got a lot of backlash for that. Maybe we should state that, it was cut off. And so, yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember that quote being cut off, though. I kind of remember that where she was in the kitchen and she said that.
Right.
And then she moved away. She said that. She said, there are two kinds of people in the world, those who believe in Jesus and those who don't. And then she walked away. Like it did. Yeah. There wasn't anything else.
Oh, like she actually left the scene?
Well, she moved. She was in the kitchen and she moved away from the counter where she was and stepped away and went on to something else.
Oh, that's
interesting. It
didn't
seem to me like there was a cut, but maybe there was. I don't know.
I just deleted it too. I could look it up. But anyway, interesting.
Right. I suppose we could just watch it again and all get mad all over again.
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's just put it to a vote, huh?
Do you mean inspired, Kyle?
Inspired. Yes.
However you want to take it.
My lawyer agrees. Inspired. That's good.
My lawyer's doing a rail of Adderall off my banister.
Awesome.
I'm not
Kyle,
so sure this isn't just a homeless guy.
I think it's just a homeless guy, Kyle,
He has a briefcase.
full of Adderall.
Well, I didn't ask what's in it. Confidential papers, most likely.
Right.
All right.
Attorney-client privilege.
Yes.
That's right.
Let's put it to a vote, Kyle.
I'm not going clear on this one.
All right. Gabe.
Yeah, it's a tough category. I think I'm gonna go with Jesus Camp, I think, on this one.
All right. Tom.
I'm gonna go with I was gonna say the Scientology one. I'll go with Going Clear because I just feel like they're we didn't talk about them at all, but
Yeah, we really didn't.
Which is kind of funny.
I mean they were. I don't want to say I don't want to be like they were really believable, but like I really had problem figuring out like what does Paul Haggis have to lie about? You know,
Right.
It's. I don't understand. It was hard for me to understand why anybody would make this stuff up.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay, so you went, you know what? I'm going to give it Jesus Camp just because I voted for Tom Cruise the last time around. All right. Like I said, no worthwhile trivia, but let's move on to our third round, which is directing.
I think this is really where a lot of these categories kind of come together in this area for documentaries. It comes down to, going through all of the footage that you have and turning it into, I imagine for these documentaries, they have just massive amounts of footage, and they can't show, but a fraction of it. And so I think it's really important to be able to go through and pick the right footage and start to compile a story out of it. Because I think, like we said before, the story isn't always clear up front. We don't know. Well, we have an idea. We know this is an interesting subject matter. We know this is a complicated subject matter, but we don't know what the story is going to be necessarily. Although, I think maybe for Going Clear, there was definitely kind of a bias that they started with. They wanted to show the kind of for lack of a better term, and maybe a little cliche, the sins of something like Scientology and how it abuses people for its own profit, literally. And so I think they probably had an agenda. They probably had a direction they were going initially. But however, the flip side to that is with Going Clear, maybe, it seems to me that a lot of the active church members were either disallowed or disinterested in providing interviews for the filmmakers. So you get kind of a one-sided thing to start with. We can't show the other side because they won't allow us to. But, I think it becomes very clear that they have kind of a point to it. And that what they need to do is they need to take the most compelling, the most interesting, the most meaningful parts of this massive amount of footage that they have and put it together. And I think both of these films actually did a really great job of it. And I think one of the strengths of Jesus Camp is the editing. It was made in, 2006. And I was surprised at the production quality, that it looked like they were still shooting on VHS or something. That the video quality was pretty low, because I'm pretty sure HD technology was probably pretty widely available in 2006.
Not as much as you think.
Was it not?
No,
Was it not?
No, it was probably shot on mini DV.
It could be. It
was more than likely shot on mini DV, probably 720.
Yeah, it didn't even seem that high to me, but maybe it was, But I think the real artistry came in the editing. And one of the things that I really that really stood out to me and was really interesting to me is that there was no narration. It was just raw footage. I don't know. Do you guys remember? Was there even music? Did they have like music that wasn't part of the scene, non-diegetic kind of music in there?
I don't feel like it was scored. Like that doesn't.
I feel like it was just like we've got this footage, and we're gonna cut it together to show you the important parts of this story, and we're just gonna lay it out there in front of you. The only part of it that was even mildly kind of like there was extra information is every once in a while you would get a subtitle that would say where they are or what they're doing, those kinds of things. Every once in a while you get a little bit of a subtitle, but it was really to a certain degree very hands off, and I found that really interesting, and that I think that was one of the strongest parts of Jesus Camp is the editing and the hands-off nature of it. It's just like we're gonna put it together, and we're gonna let you decide. Now the flip side to that is that the production value of Going Clear was obviously really high. I mean, it was beautifully produced. The interviews were gorgeous. The opening sequence had some really beautiful shots to it. The production value was very high, and it was well directed and well put together, and they had all the right archival footage to put in there at the right times. It was very well, I would say, orchestrated. But I think both of them are very strong in the directing standpoint for very, very different reasons.
Yeah, they're very different documentaries. Like they're similar in some spots, but they're very different if you look at them the right way. Tom has just informed us that his lawyer has cleared the fact that Jesus Camp was shot on DVX 100s SD mini DV. So there you go.
Yep. Yeah. Standard definition throughout.
Def, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and you could definitely tell, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that really impacts it, because I felt it was a very powerful documentary nonetheless.
It's all about the subject matter.
Yeah,
the visuals were not the most important thing.
Right. I was not distracted by the fact. I noticed that it wasn't the highest quality video, but that didn't distract me from the story or the information being portrayed. But I did notice almost immediately with Going Clear that the production value was much higher. Like there's these beautiful shots at the beginning title sequence and that kind of thing. I'm like, oh yeah. But that may speak more to budget than anything else. I don't know. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I can ramble for 10 minutes if you want, but I pretty much agree with everything Gabe said there. So I know this isn't a smack or whatever, agree, however you want to put it. Cinnabon, that sounds good. But yeah, the impact of these documentaries, that to me is the overall judge of the directing. Is, do they have an impact? Are they interesting, compelling? Can you see the bias, or do you feel like you're being led in a specific way or whatever? Because to me, that kind of breaks a little bit of my interest in a documentary sometimes if I very obviously feel like I'm being led to feel a certain way. But in both cases, I thought these were both very well put together and extremely impactful and important and interesting documentaries for very different reasons, and they're both structured very differently. But, in my opinion, the directing is excellent on both of these pieces.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like I said, you got to give Jesus Camp credit because, I mean, they didn't really know what the story was going in, and they didn't really come up with a story, but it is compelling, and but just the scope and how much information they relayed in Going Clear. The archival footage and photos they'd have to go through to kind of piece the story and going back that far. And I mean, I'm always amazed when people do these documentaries and they're talking and they cut to a photo that is like from that moment that they're talking about. And it, I've done documentaries before where people are talking and you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe we have the photo she's talking about. So,
Right.
yeah. So agreed. The directors did just an absolutely amazing job.
Well, I thought
That's it.
I thought they did a great job in Going Clear, just with kind of some of the reenactments. The writing in the books, the drives, I don't know. I think Kyle said it felt like an expose, right? Is that what you said?
Earlier. Yeah.
And I totally agree with that. It's just, it was really well put together. Where Jesus Camp, it keeps coming back to that, but I just, felt like, oh, I'm watching a day in the life of, where Going Clear was trying to tell you a story, whether it was biased or not, it was still trying to tell a story. And I felt like Jesus Camp was more or less, trying to distance itself and just saying, this is what we observed. We have not tried to alter it in any way. This is just what we have, take it or leave it type of deal. And each one's different, but I really, really liked some of the shots and some of the techniques in Going Clear.
Mm-hmm. And somebody apparently had access to an e-meter or something.
You can buy them.
Really?
Yeah.
I need one. One.
I think you can buy them off eBay.
So many thetans.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're all attached to me.
My lawyer has just hung himself. Thank you, Gabe.
Well,
You know that he's not going to get away from those thetans. You can't hang your way out of thetans.
right. They'll just be there in the next life.
Yeah, let's see. E-meter.
Now he's just going to have a bad neck in his next life.
But obviously, I mean, they
You
have
can
these
buy
really
them for
beautiful
$250 on Amazon.
What?
Or not
Jesus.
Amazon, on eBay.
How do we know it's an authentic e-meter? How do we know that it's a function?
Well, let's see. A lot of them have been refurbished. They come with
Refurbished
Really?
e-meters.
Refurbished.
Here's the Mark Super 7 Quantum e-meter package with case Scientology.
I guess I didn't realize there were like different versions of it.
$450. Yes.
Of course they do, because then it's like, well, we've got a new e-meter, so you got to, and it's different.
It's like updating your
so you got to
iPhone.
go at the next level, and it'll cost
Let's
you
say
$15.
Let's say allegedly thetans aren't real. What does an e-meter actually measure?
It's didn't they say that in the documentary? That's 1/3 of a polygraph test.
Right.
Okay. So is it just your respiration?
It's probably some electrical. If it's legitimately measuring anything,
Right.
at all, it's probably some sort of electrical, signal.
I think it's current in between you and what you're.
Because you have to hold one in each hand, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Man, speaking of directing real quick, what is it about when they show the archival footage of the introduction to Scientology videos that they show people? What is it about those videos that they all look the same, no matter what they're selling, what company they're for, all those infotainment or like infomercial things, they all look the same.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's smiling the same way. Everybody's dressed the same. It doesn't matter if you're, if it's for some timeshare company or Scientology. It's like there must be one company that makes them, and they just all look and feel exactly the same.
All the lighting is the same.
It's so
movement.
bizarre.
Yeah.
It's like the way you look at a soap opera and you go, God, that looks like a soap opera. Nothing else looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of like behind the scenes only for company-made videos, they all look the damn same.
Well, we used to
So weird.
We used to have a company here in town that did that, and where Tom and I worked, we had our video dub guy. That's all he did was dub VHSs of their films, and they were all made for courses on sexual harassment, on the legality of this, the legality of that, and they all looked the same.
I feel like there must be one set somewhere where they just film all of those. It's just like 10 different office settings.
Right.
So bizarre. Anyways.
No, God, what were we? Oh, we were talking about e-meters. Yeah. I think it's essentially just sending pulses through, it's just electricity going from one thing to another. It could catch your heartbeat. It could catch your, it's.
And who knows? It may be able
doing
to,
that.
To a certain degree, it may be able to measure something, your emotional response to a particular question.
Right.
Which could be very telling to the interviewers. What did they call them? What are the people who are doing the
auditors?
Auditors, yes. It could be very telling to the auditor, like, I need to go down this path more because I got a little bit of a blip on the e-meter here. So now I know that I'm on to something and I need to go down this path further for more blackmail material. And that kind of thing.
That was my big thing. It's like, oh my God, like all these secrets, and then they can just hold that over people.
Oh yeah, and willingly do so.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very frightening.
Very, very frightening. Yeah.
Galileo. Sorry.
Figaro.
Little do we know.
Oh, my lawyers get nervous. We better stop.
Oh, yep. Sorry. Does Disney own that? No, we're safe. Okay. There's a funny story, and I wonder if this would work with the e-meter. On Penn and Teller's Bullshit, they showed you how you could beat a lie detector test, and when the trick is when they are doing all their baseline readings, every time you answer yes, you need to clench your butthole as tight as you can because you cause all this pressure in your body, and it will totally give it all false readings.
It's funny. They talked about that in the TV show The Americans. They're trying to train somebody to beat a polygraph test, and they keep telling her to clench her ass, and she thinks they're joking.
Yeah.
And then she beats the polygraph test.
Because
Spoiler alert for season 1. So I think.
Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All right, so
I'm practicing right now. I need to learn to do it without so much noise.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. You're giving away that you're lying, Gabe.
But I think directing, man, it's you kind of have to tiptoe around. I mean, you do have to tiptoe around the going clear, right? You got to pick your wording. So I think the directing is more of that was more precise. In
going clear.
Yes, in going clear. I think the directing was more precise. Where the directing in Jesus Camp was like, here it is. Here you go. Where going clear was like, I want to make sure I can work in this town again, or I can afford to buy a cheeseburger.
Maybe.
It's just scary to me. Like, I just found Going Clear so much scarier than Jesus Camp.
How do you make that choice to approach such a controversial and on a certain level dangerous topic?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we put it to a vote? Tom, Kyle, do you have anything else you'd like to say about directing for either of these films?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Oh, God, I was worried. I thought you were taken, Tom. Tom, go ahead and vote.
For direction, I'm gonna go with Jesus Camp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gabe?
Well, I really respect what Jesus Camp did, but I'm going to give my vote to Going Clear because of its kind of its clear direction.
Wow.
How much money do you think they had to pay to get to that clear direction?
I
But it
don't
was
know,
expensive.
A lot.
Yeah. Oh, my turn?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm going to vote for Jesus Camp.
All right. Okie dokie. One more category to go.
Do you get a vote in this one, Mike?
Yeah.
Have you been voting?
Yeah, I voted for Cthulhu. No, I voted for Tom Cruise. So,
Okay.
I want to do a fake documentary, a mockumentary about Light Going Clear, but about the cult of Cthulhu. That'd be fun.
start writing it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Start filming.
I know
it
a
should
few
just be
people.
based on H.P. Lovecraft's like real casual racism, like because he was like a really bad human being.
Yes, he was.
Anyways, moving on.
All right.
Gonna get sued by the estate of H.P. Lovecraft.
My lawyer's shaking their head no.
My lawyer's asleep on the floor.
After all that Adderall?
I don't think it was Adderall now.
Oh.
Not sure what it was. This came out of a big bag.
Oh,
A
God.
big loose grocery bag full of pills. I don't know. It's weird in here.
Kyle, you may want to move.
But I gave him a key. What's the point?
All right. We got to
well, I
talk after
suppose
this.
there's a point.
All right.
Okay.
Fourth and final round overall.
First of all, I was surprised by how different these two were. I didn't know anything about Jesus Camp. I just knew it was one of those documentaries that everybody was talking about 10 years ago, and it was on my very, very long of documentaries I need to see list that gets bigger and not shorter every year. So one of the reasons I was kind of glad we did it is that I was able to knock 2 documentaries off that list. And I was under the impression that Jesus Camp was going to expose something, that I was going to take a look into the lives of the people that run these camp and find out that they that they're actually giant satanic assholes, and they weren't. They were kind of milk toast Christian assholes. And I don't get me wrong, the adults in Jesus Camp were very hypocritical, and they just they preach about love and acceptance, and then it's just I'm not seeing it in what they do.
Do as I say, don't do as I do. Right?
Yeah, and I'm really sorry because I watched these like 3 weeks ago, and I had specific moments where I was just like, and what was that, and what was that, and I don't have them with me, but that's the biggest part. I have a problem with both of these, organized religions, is that the hypocrisy behind it all.
Yes.
And it's not just these two religions. A lot of religions have that. And so I was a little disappointed that Jesus Camp didn't really have that. But at the same time, it was kind of, when you see a documentary and you're surprised by the content of it and it doesn't go as planned, then, you have to give them kudos that they were actually able to put together an Academy nominated documentary that, that people find interesting without resorting to, cheap shots and, taking the mask off of people, because, whether you're a devout Christian or you have a problem with Jesus Camp, you put it in and you take something away completely different. And that, I think, was the really amazing part about Jesus Camp, is that, devout Christians will look at it and be like, yes, this is what I want my children to be exposed to. And other people look at it and say, oh my God, look what they're doing to these children. And so, for that, it really needs to be commended. On the other hand, I feel like Going Clear is a really important story. And I feel that Scientology's days are fairly numbered. I'd be very surprised if 20 years from now Scientology is still a thing, because from the documentary it seems like it's waning pretty quickly.
I don't know. They have their own network now.
They have their own network, but what did they say? They're down to like 20,000 certified members anymore.
Yes.
They also have like $5 billion in assets because they're buying all of this real estate.
They do, and they're very wealthy, but people are not falling for it like they used to because of that tier 3. People find out, like Paul Haggis said, he found out what it was about, and he's like, "This is a joke, right?" And everything started to fall apart for him, and that just kind of trickled down and seems to be destroying Scientology in general. Leah Romani is another famous actress that was in Scientology, and she's worked hard to expose them, and she has a great book called Troublemaker all about that. And I believe she was the one that said, like, Tom Cruise could end this entire thing tomorrow.
Yes.
Or was that in the documentary?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I think it was in documentary, but I've watched her show. Okay. I've watched her show as well. So,
so yeah, and she's along the same lines as the Paul Haggis, and she's just trying to bring them down as well. And it seems like the momentum is on their side. What are we talking about? The documentary themselves, about the content? I fucked that up.
You're all right.
Anyway, so I think these are both really, really great documentaries. For overall, if I was going to do rewatchability, I think I'd probably watch Going Clear before Jesus Camp again. Just because I find that more interesting. I find the creation of a religion more interesting, because Scientology, we really get to see the beginning, middle, and we're starting to see the end of a religion. Whereas, Christianity ain't going anywhere anytime soon, right? So, and that's what I kind of like about the Going Clear, is that we're actually seeing the rise, fall, and decline for some of us in our own lifetimes. It's amazing.
Yeah. Just one really kind of silly side note. Did anybody find it interesting that Jesus Camp was in Devil's Lake?
Yeah, that was,
I noticed.
Did anybody find that kind of interesting,
Yeah,
that they chose that location for Jesus Camp?
Talking about hypocrisy, right? So
Yeah, it just seems like, why there? Was that intentional, or is that just, or did they not even? How could they not think of that? I was like, what? Why is it there? Yeah. Anyway, that's
the
really
next town over. Yeah. Well, I know after Jesus Camp came out, she was not allowed to re-rent that place to do it again, because the owners were not aware, I suppose, of what was going on there. They would not let her rent that place again to hold that camp.
Really?
I read something about
that. That was in my trivia as well. Yep.
There was some vandalism of that area after the documentary came out and people found out.
Yeah, they were getting letters and vandalism, like pretty bad letters. So
yeah. And then there's the whole scene, like in the supply closet, where she was just like Jesus Carrot Top, and like pulling out all the props.
Oh God, yeah.
But isn't it funny?
So bizarre.
Wasn't it funny, all the things that she chose, all those macabre kind of things that she chose to like teach about Jesus? Is like, it's like, well, here's an axe and a, whatever. She like had all these really disturbing things that she was using to teach about Jesus. I'm like, that's so weird. It's like she went to the local, Halloween store and just grabbed a bunch of stuff there and said, how can I use this to teach about Jesus? The brain mold and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, that's so weird. It's very weird.
To me, it seems like that'd be what you'd get if you had the worst elementary school teacher and no superintendent or parents or anything like that to correct them or tell them that's not appropriate. And to me, that sort of is the terrifying part of Jesus Camp. We talked about, the difference between these movies one being a fly on the wall, one being an expose. But for me, in 2006, when I watched Jesus Camp, it was an expose to me, because I was not aware of the evangelical movement in America. And now watching it again years later, after it's maintained being such a major force in politics and the world, it was, it could have been like a warning to people who did not want the world to go in this way. And a lot of people noticed, but, it managed to continue to push forward and still making huge influences in our culture. So to me, it was an expose back then about something I knew almost nothing about. And hearing the radio host talk about it again, having watched this movie 12 years ago, listening to him talk about it now, and it's like, oh my God, that's the same thing we're hearing now. And he was talking about it, a decade ago. It's very interesting. And Going Clear was impeccably produced, very well put together, interesting. Very compelling subject matter. Had the budget and the chops behind it to make it, fascinating to watch, and told a really good story. Jesus Camp always terrified me because you're not talking about adults who are making decisions and then regretting them. You're talking about children who don't know any better and are being shaped and molded and told these things by adults before they've learned to cope with and have a sense of, have a bullshit detector, have an idea of thinking like, I should think about this for myself. They're being pushed and pulled and molded in this way. And that to me was always the most disturbing part. Scientology and the practices they talk about in Going Clear are reprehensible. But they are, for the most part, happening to competent adults who are getting into bad situations. That doesn't mean they're not bad or regrettable, but to see things happen to children who don't know any better and are being pushed into this thing by grown-ups, their own family or other adults, to me, that's always been the most disturbing part of Jesus Camp and a lot of the documentaries I've seen.
Right, but Going Clear, the Scientologists have children as well.
Sure, right.
We
They get caught up in that world. Right.
It doesn't seem like. I don't know though. That's one thing I would like to know more about with Scientology. They don't seem to focus on children. So many religions tend to focus on, for lack of a better term, and my lawyer will object, indoctrinating children. But whereas it seems like Scientology doesn't necessarily do that
because kids don't have money.
Exactly.
Right. But
exactly. They go
other,
go for yeah.
Other religions, they do head counts, and Scientology, they check their bank account. That's the difference between the two.
Yeah,
honestly, if kids had money, Scientologists would go after them. But and the thing is too, you run out of money. The kids, I just that's why the reason why Scientology won't last. Without kids, you can't have a religion. Christianity figured that out a long time ago, that if you hook the kids, you'll have them for a long time. Well, it was Christianity and cigarettes. They both figured that out.
Right.
My lawyer is shaking his head while he lights a cigarette. I don't know what that means.
Oh. He's smoking in your house. You have a very old...
You're not allowed to smoke in here. What are you doing?
You have a very old Southern lawyer.
What are you doing? Why are you eating Kentucky Fried Chicken while smoking a cigarette?
You're gonna make your suit smell bad.
Well, but they talk in Going Clear about how these people that leave, the better half will stay in the church and with the kids, and they're ripped away from their kids, and
it's crazy.
Like even before I had Liam, that bothered me, but now that I've got him, it bothers me even more.
That idea of suppressive people and cutting yourself off is the most cult-like behavior I can think of.
Exactly.
When you're not allowed to communicate with people outside of your thought group, like that's, emotionally manipulative and abusive. It's insane. It's crazy to hear those stories.
Right. All right. Do you guys have anything else you want to add to overall?
Both awesome movies. Really depressing subject matter at points.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to next month. But on the kid thing too, and I just they're asking these kids to make lifelong promises at an age where they don't understand what they're promising, and it's just I've always had a problem with that. We have one son that's at the confirmation age, and I'm just like, I'm very much against it, because I'm like, you're confirming for the rest of your life and the kid's 12. I'm just like, I think confirmation should be after college, when you've actually, you have some ideas about God and that kind of thing. It's just, I don't know. And that whole scene in Jesus Christ just rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, you're taking advantage. Jesus Camp. What did I say?
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ. Jesus Camp. And yeah, I just, It just bothers me that they prey on, and Scientologist does this too. They prey on naive people,
Yes.
and it's just
Well, that's the best way any con man will do is prey on the weakest, right?
Well, I mean, and even smart people can believe very dumb things when they're desperate, sad, upset, and they get very good at pitching these things, so I'm sure if you took away all the bad things about Scientology, the idea of being self-reflective, working through your pain, having a shared community, those are good tenets. It's the package it comes wrapped in, and the fact that you have to interact with humans, that's the problem. And I think that's a problem a lot of people have with organized religion, is some of the tenets are very noble and good, but when you get people involved, it starts to go bad very quickly.
That's true.
And all right, so that's the South Park. That's what South Park did really, really well. So if you could look at the 2 episodes they did, one on Mormons and one on Scientology.
Yes.
On Mormons, they handled it. It seemed, they poke fun at it, but at the same time, at the very heart of it, at the end of it, they're like, they aren't hurting people. They aren't misleading people. Yes, their history lies in a really ridiculous, idea, and very improbable that it ever happened. But what religion doesn't have a story like that? And if it makes people's lives better and it creates people who are kind and love each other, then really what's wrong with Mormons? And that's one of the really awesome things about that episode in the Book of Mormon musical. Whereas when they went in and they did the Scientology episode, they destroyed them. And they were like, there is no redeeming value to this religion whatsoever. It is a sham. They are con men, and they are only interested in your money. And I love watching those 2 episodes together and just seeing that they took just a completely different approach on them, and it was great.
I totally agree with everything you just said.
Yeah. So, are you talking about the Mormon one? Is the Joseph Smith?
Dum,
Yeah.
dum,
Dum
dum,
dum
dum,
dum.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen the Scientology one too.
This is what they actually believe. It keeps flashing up on the screen.
Yeah.
And then you go back and they talk to Mormons and ask them, what do you think about that episode, and what do you think about the musical? And they're like, we like it. It exposes our religion to other people, and they don't really defame us in any way. So, we're very happy with it. And I'm sure that those 2 things produced more Mormons, not less. So,
Right.
Good on them.
Okay.
Sweet, I got my South Park reference in.
There you go. Let's go ahead and vote, Tom.
Overall, go and clear.
All right.
It's close.
Kyle.
Jesus camp.
All right. Gabe.
Going clear.
All right. And I'm like you guys. It always comes down to rewatchability. I'm going to have to go with going clear. Just real quick, documentaries are one of my favorite genres to watch. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I like to look at the world differently through, someone else's lens. I also like to learn something. It could be because of my absolute pure love of the original History Channel and Discovery Channel before everything was reality TV. But I really enjoy when we get to do these documentaries. The show isn't really formatted for them, but I always have a good time discussing them and trying to figure out why someone would make a documentary about this certain subject. And I think I find that more interesting because I want to know why this person was like, I'm going to make a film about such and such. Like there's documentaries out there about certain techniques of quilting. Mm-hmm. And you watch it and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I never cared about quilting until I watched that documentary and they made it good. But yeah, so documentaries can really open your worldview. They can also harm your worldview. So you always have to check yourself. Can I say it? You all right? Put the cigarette out before you wreck yourself.
Wreck yourself, right? Yeah.
I had to check with the lawyer. So anyway, let me go ahead and do math, and let's move on to our recommendations for this month. Here you go. Tom.
Oh, I get to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was hard because I was like, do I want to do a documentary or do I want to do a religious film? And I was like, there's lots of great documentaries, but I'm going to recommend a religious film. And I think everybody should watch Kevin Smith's Dogma because that movie came into my life where I had a lot of doubts about my own personal religion, and it answered a lot of questions for me. And it's very funny, but it's very, I don't want to say educational, but it comes from a very good place. And Kevin Smith, he takes shots at personal religion or at religion, but he also, like the South Park guys, he understands the value in religion in certain people's lives, and he calls out Catholicism for some of their hypocrisy. Not all of them, I'd point out, but some of them. So I would recommend Dogma because it's hilarious, and it's just loaded with tons of biblical references. And anybody like me that spent 12 years in Catholic school will just get all of those little inside jokes.
Plus, it has Selma Hayek in it.
It does have Selma Hayek in it. Yes.
All right. Gabe. Good pick.
Well, I thought, I always like to try to be, topical. But I couldn't think of any other documentaries that I would recommend at the moment. Because like you, or like Tom. Tom has a list of documentaries that he wants to watch. I do too, and I just don't. So I was trying to think, what have I seen recently that was interesting or challenging or whatever? And I would recommend 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Good one.
It's a challenging film on many levels.
It's not what you think it's going to be. That's
no, but it's a really, really great character study with really fantastic acting in it. If you're averse to strong language, don't watch it, because every other word I think is the F word. The language is very, very strong, but there's some great scenes. And there is a little bit of a tie-in. There's a scene where a pastor comes to visit the main character in her home, and she has some choice words for him, and it's really fantastic. It's a really great scene. It's one of those things that I can't tell you if I liked it or not. I think I did, but it was very challenging. It was very interesting, and it was a very compelling character study. So if you haven't seen it, go check out 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
It's a good pick. Good pick, Gabe. I had the same problem too. I'm like, did I like this movie, or did I just like the characters in it?
Right.
Oh my God, Sam Rockwell once again floors you. But
fantastic. He's so good.
Oh,
He's so good. And
so good.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle.
All right. Well, I decided I'm going to recommend a documentary, and then I realized that I don't know if I can actually recommend that you watch it. So I'm going to recommend 2 documentaries. One being Hero Dreams of Sushi. Not sure if anybody's ever seen this before, but it's a documentary about a man who makes sushi, and it's fascinating. I hate seafood, but it's really a documentary about perfection and pride in your work and living up to your father. And it is an insanely interesting documentary, and I recommend you watch it because I think it's very good, and I think you'll enjoy it. Now, another documentary, which I think is also very good, but I don't know if I can recommend you ever watch it. And it's called Dear Zachary, A Letter to a Son About His Father. It was done in 2008. And I'm not sure that I've ever watched a movie that made me as mad as this movie did. It is a fascinating and wonderful documentary that you will never want to watch again. I'll put it that way. I've heard it described as the best movie you'll only ever watch once. Because once you've watched it, there's never going to be a reason for you to watch it again. And whenever you have the conversation about it with someone else, you'll probably say the same thing I'm telling you right now. So watch that one with care. Maybe do a little research before you watch it. Make sure you're in the right head frame to watch that movie. But don't spoil it. It's great, but very difficult to watch.
All right. Thank you, Kyle.
Mm.
I had two, but I'm just gonna one. No, I'll go with my original pick here. HBO does do a lot of great documentaries. They're also known for their sports documentaries, and they did one just recently. It was released April 10th, 2018, and it was fascinating. Not only because of the subject matter, but how they made you feel tension when you know it's fake and you know it was put on, but there's just a way that they put it together, and it's their latest documentary, sports documentary. It's called Andre the Giant, and it follows around Andre the Giant, who wrestled in he essentially helped build the WWE into what it is today. And there is I want to say 10 minute, 15 minute part of the show where they're discussing Hogan and Andre wrestling at WrestleMania 3. And they were able to put in so much drama about that match. It was incredible. Like, you're watching, you're like, oh my God, I hope Hulk Hogan wins. You know, I hope Andre does the right thing. I hope, and you're watching and you know the outcome. You know what's going to happen. And you know that they were helping each other. Hogan wrote out the match. But there's just this drama that they put into it. And the editing and the music is just fantastic. And I love it. I'm not really that big of a fan of wrestling. I was big into it when I was a kid and a little bit in college. And I remember some of the clips that they were showing. I remember watching them on Saturday morning, and it really took me back. But they interview Schwarzenegger, Robin Wright, since she was in Princess Bride with him, Rob Reiner, Billy Crystal, Hulk Hogan, Cyndi Lauper. And it just kind of goes on, and they have interviews, and then they also use a lot of archival footage. But if you ever wanted to know what it was like to be one of the biggest men on the planet, you need to watch this documentary. And you may say to yourself, oh, that guy was, what was he, 7'8", 7'10", something I can't even remember. I'm saying it off the top of my head, but he was huge. Yet he was one of the loneliest people in the world, and it will break your heart at some points. So check out Andre the Giant. It's on HBO. All right, I rambled on enough about that. Let's go ahead and poke the monkey. Find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is Going Clear!
Tom, where can people find you and maybe try and clear your thetans?
Vimeo, Facebook, kind of on Twitter, but not really. But most of the time, people can find me indoctrinating small children into the John Travolta fan club and doing shots of cherry Kool-Aid with Paul Haggis.
All right. Gabe.
You can look me up on Facebook or check out some of our films on onegenomeshort.com.
All right. Kyle.
I'm on Facebook. My profile is set to private, so you're going to have to message me if you want to be my friend. Or at least tell me what the hell's going on. Does anybody listen to this? If you do, you can be my friend. I'm looking for friends, especially now that I have to move because I let this homeless lawyer into my house.
All right. Well, you can find me on Facebook, I guess, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Just search Southsider Studios. You can also find this podcast and some of our other podcasts on iTunes. And we would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use. You can contact us at cinesmac@gmail.com. Send us some mail, whether or not you agree or disagree with our takes on both these documentaries, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search CineSmack. And this is going to be a short turnaround, fellas. For May, we're heading back to high school as Dazed and Confused takes on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. This ought to be a little bit better subject matter than what we discussed tonight. So for Kyle, Gabe, Tom, our lawyers, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
Mr. Bobby, come on down here. Help me, Jesus! Help me, Jewish God! Help me, Allah! Ah! Help me, Tom Cruise! Ah! Help me, Oprah Winfrey! Tom Cruise using witchcraft on me to get the fire off me!
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.